The T-72s, the T-90s, the Sukhois, the MiGs. If India were to go to war today, most of the weapons systems that we would be using would be Russian. In fact, at one point, 70% of India's war inventory was made in Russia. We were, and still are, their biggest arms buyers. But in a world where geopolitical realities have changed rapidly, the India-Russia relationship is changing as well. It continues to be steady and cordial, but the romanticism of the past is missing. India has leaned closer to America. Russia has struck up a friendship with China. Russian President Vladimir Putin will be in India on 6th of December, only his second trip abroad since the pandemic broke out, in the hope of putting the zing back into this relationship. And he's already set the tone, sending the first batch of S-400 systems to India in record time. India, of course, has reciprocated as well by risking US sanctions and pressure, but not going back on the S-400 deal. So first things first, what are the S-400s? The S-400 is one of the most advanced and potent air defense systems in the world. Think of it as a shield that protects its area against all sorts of aerial attacks. Drones, missiles, rockets, even fighter jets. The S-400 detects an aerial threat approaching the air defense bubble, that is the area it has to protect, calculates the trajectory of the threat and fires missiles to counter it. It can simultaneously track up to 160 objects in a 600-kilometer range. Here's a visual reference. You remember the Iron Dome, which Israel used to protect itself from missiles coming in from Gaza? Well, a S-400 is somewhat similar, only it protects a much larger area. Several countries have the S-400. Worryingly for India, so does China. In fact, China has deployed it at the LAC. On India's request, in the backdrop of the LAC standoff, Russia hastened the delivery of the S-400s despite an initial delay. And despite COVID restrictions, Russia trained Indian engineers and technicians on the system. The first unit of the S-400 will be deployed on India's northern front by early 2022. All 5 are to be in India by April 2023. It's a big muscle up as India looks to secure its borders against its 2 neighbors, a belligerent China and troublemaker Pakistan. China wasn't exactly happy with the Russians selling the S-400 to India, but there is very little they could do. Now, why does the United States of America have a problem with us buying the S-400 from Russia? India did risk the wrath of its new strategic partner, America, as it signed the $5.4 billion deal to buy 5 units of the S-400 from Russia. What business does US have interfering in India's affairs, you may ask? Well, there are 2 reasons for it. First is something called the CAATSA, C-A-A-T-S-A. It means Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. The US passed this in 2017 to essentially sanction any person or nation that buys arms from Russia. Turkey, a longtime NATO ally, was sanctioned by the US for buying these very S-400s from Russia. The Americans have threatened India as well, but so far the sanctions haven't come, and the general understanding is that the US is making an exception for India. But there will be an exchange offer, which means India will commit to buying more arms from the United States of America. Now, the US wants India to wean off its traditional reliance on Russian defense systems and wants to replace it with American technology. How much arms does India buy from Russia? India is the second largest arms importer in the world after Saudi Arabia. But our imports have decreased by 33% in the last 10 years. That is good news. But the biggest impact of this has been on Russia. It remains our largest supplier, but its deliveries have dropped by 53%. Now, if you quickly do the math, then Russia, which was supplying 70% of India's arms at one point, is now down to 49%. No surprises for guessing that the US was impacted as well, with India reducing its shopping abroad. Between 2011 and 2015, the US was the second largest arms supplier to India. But in 2016-2020, the period between that, India's arms imports from the United States were 46% lower than in the previous 5-year period, making the US the fourth largest supplier to India in 2016-2020. So the top spot was retained by Russia as India's biggest arms supplier at 49%. The second spot had been taken by France, which accounted for 18% of the arms import by India. Remember the Rafales? Israel was at number 3 with 13%. The United States was fourth. Not a situation they are very happy with. Now, though India is trying to be self-reliant in defense, building its own aircraft carriers and warships and submarines and tanks and combat helicopters, it still needs to shop from abroad for complete operational readiness. As both US and Russia compete for our defense market, there will be a balancing act. India is buying 30 cutting-edge drones from America. On offer from Russia when President Putin comes visiting will be the S-400s. Is the S-400 the next buy from Russia for India? The S-400 is a next-generation surface-to-air missile system designed to intercept and destroy intercontinental ballistic missiles, as well as hypersonic cruise missiles and aircraft. The Turks and the Chinese are already in line to buy it, but will India risk US sanctions once again? Well, India is also buying 4 Admiral Yegorovich class frigates from Russia, despite having the capability and the capacity to build them at home. Then there is the $3 billion deal for the lease of a third nuclear-powered attack submarine, Chakra-3, which was signed in 2019. What else is on the Indo-Russia talk table? When Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi meet, India and Russia expected to renew their military technical cooperation arrangement for 2021 to 2031 and sign several agreements in defense, in trade, and science and technology. The most important will be the reciprocal exchange of logistics agreement, which will allow militaries of the two sides to access logistics and support facilities at each other's bases and ports. Orders of additional Sukhoi, MiG-29 jets and S-400s and more T-90 tanks are already in the works. The deal for 6 lakh Russian-designed AK-203 assault rifles and the Igla-S very short-range air defense system will also be concluded in this trip. Another important aspect is how India and Russia can cooperate in using India as a production base for exporting Russian-origin equipment and services to third countries. Why does Russia matter to India? The bedrock of the India-Russia relationship has been defense technology. Given that a bulk of our tank and fighters are of Russian origin, the country remains a critical supplier of spare parts. When I say bulk, here is what I mean. 96% of India's main battle tank force is Russian, the T-90s and the T-72s. The Indian Navy's sole operational aircraft carrier is a refurbished Soviet-era ship, and its entire complement of fighter and ground attack aircraft are Russian-made or produced in India on license. The Navy's fighter fleet comprises 43 MiG-29s. The Navy's sole nuclear-powered submarine is on lease from Russia, and 8 of the service's 14 other submarines are Russian-origin Kilo class. And the Indian Air Force? Its 667 plane FGA fleet is 71% Russian origin, 39% Sukhois, 22% MiG-21s, 9% MiG-29s. All 6 air tankers of the Indian Air Force are Russian-made IL-78s. The uniqueness of the relationship is exemplified by the BrahMos project that includes transfer of technology and joint production of missiles. The name of the joint venture came from 2 rivers in India and in Russia, Brahmaputra of India and the Moskva of Russia. The flood of technical know-how from BrahMos has made many Make in India projects float. Let's not forget that Russian technology is cutting edge and way cheaper than any American or European system and comes with no strings attached, unlike, say, an American system. And most importantly, Russia is the only country not averse to helping India with its strategic programs like the nuclear-powered ballistic submarine Arihant, which is based on the Russian Akula-class submarines. As India faces a desperate shortage of submarines, Russia is also leasing it the nuclear-powered attack submarine Chakra-3. Let's also not forget that at the height of the tensions between India and China over eastern Ladakh, it was Russia that brought the two warring sides together on the talks table. It may not have helped too much, but at least they tried. But there are concerns and complaints as well. Russia has a growing relationship with China, one that has seen them emerge as the biggest supplier of arms to the Middle Kingdom. 77% of China's arms imports are Russian. Plus, Russia has openly dissed Quad, an anti-China alliance that includes America, Australia, Japan, and India. But fact also is, apart from US pressure, India wants to diversify its defense imports. There is also dissatisfaction in India with post-sales services and maintenance that is being offered by the Russians. India was also displeased by the high cost and low quality of spare parts for weaponry imported from Russia in the past, as well as the delays in supply. For example, there was a 5-year delay in the delivery of aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya, as well as a cost escalation from $974 million to $2.35 billion. The Indian Air Force's experience with the Sukhoi while dealing with the Russians for weapons and maintenance has put the force off wanting any more Russian fighters. It has come to a point where India is arming its Russian fighters with Israeli and British missiles. Russia has been a good friend to India. But relationships change. Geopolitical expediency and the belligerent rise of China has forced the world to choose sides. For India, the challenge is to manage two friends who simply cannot stand the sight of each other. For Russia, the challenge is the same. Perhaps why an additional layer of consultations has been added with the 2+2 dialogue, where the defense and the foreign ministers of India and Russia will meet every year to talk things out. The President of Russia and the Prime Minister of India, in any case, meet every year for the India-Russia summit. Is the theme song for the relationship then, "Ye dosti hum nahi chhodenge"? Perhaps, but it will take a lot of work.